In front of the wedding's giant screen, Victoria arrogantly tore up Cole's resignation letter, mocking him as only fit to beg on the streets without the company. However, the next second, Wall Street legend Marcus burst through the door with a multi-billion-dollar acquisition deal, kneeling before Cole to present him with the chairman's appointment letter, and immediately freezing all of Victoria's company's bank accounts. The entire room fell into a deathly silence. Come to my channel! If you love the story, don't forget to subscribe. The May evening air on Manhattan's Upper East Side was somewhat muggy, thick with the mingled scents of expensive perfumes and fine cigars. The crystal chandelier's light refracted through the high-ceiling ballroom, almost blindingly so. This was Roche's Nasdaq listing celebration banquet, and also my and Victoria's wedding. I stood in the shadow of the champagne tower, wearing a slightly faded rented suit, looking completely out of place among the celebrities around me, all dressed in custom-made gowns. The MC on stage was loudly praising the perfect union of the bride and groom in a highly rousing voice. The groom was Blake Morton, the only son of Morton Capital, a long-established Manhattan venture capital firm, and the lead investor in Roche Technologies' Series C funding round. The bride was my wife, Victoria Ross, the founder and CEO of that company. Just minutes ago, I naively thought this was just a belated wedding. 5 years ago, Victoria's startup failed, and she was on the verge of bankruptcy. I spent 3 months working day and night in a basement in Lower Manhattan, coding out the underlying distributed algorithm that supported the company's core business, and helping her secure her first angel investment. For 5 years, I willingly remained the invisible man behind her, serving as her CTO, giving her all the credit and recognition. I thought our love could withstand the test of time, until this afternoon, when I overheard her conversation with her father outside the dressing room. Dad, Cole is just a programmer who climbed his way up from the bottom. He has some skills, but he's nothing special. Blake can bring the company $20 million in follow-up funding and the backing of a Nasdaq listing. This wedding and alliance are what I really need. Victoria's voice was cold and clear, devoid of any warmth. At that moment, I felt utterly hopeless. 5 years of dedication had only resulted in nothing more than being used and discarded. Mr. Cole, please move aside. You're blocking the way for the waiters to serve drinks. A harsh voice interrupted my thoughts. The speaker was Harrison, the company's HR director. He was holding a tray, glancing at me sideways, his eyes filled with undisguised contempt and impatience. In the company, Harrison had always been Victoria's lackey, using his power in personnel matters to make things difficult for me, the technical director. His coming here today to humiliate me was simply an attempt to impress the new boss. Blake, Harrison, it's a wedding today. You don't need to be such a lapdog. I raised my eyes, my tone so calm that even I was surprised. Harrison's expression changed, and he sneered. Cole, don't think you're something just because you wrote a few lines of code for the company before. Let me tell you the truth. President Victoria has already issued an internal personnel appointment and dismissal order. From now on, you're fired. Considering you're a long-time employee, I'll hand this termination letter to you right here, so you don't embarrass yourself at the company tomorrow. As he spoke, he took out a neatly folded piece of paper from his pocket, crumpled it into a ball, and threw it directly at my feet. Several executives passing by stopped when they heard the commotion, watching the scene with schadenfreude. Some chuckled quietly, others whispered among themselves, their eyes filled with mockery, as if watching a clown. In their eyes, this so-called hero, was nothing more than a low-level worker who could be fired at any moment. I didn't bend down to pick up the wad of paper. Instead, I slowly raised my head, my gaze passing over the crowd and landing on the center of the stage. As the music gradually faded, the wedding MC handed the microphone to the groom. Blake Morton. Blake, with his arm around Victoria's slender waist, wore a triumphant, arrogant smile. He took the microphone, his gaze sweeping across the room before finally settling precisely on me. Thank you all for attending my and Victoria's wedding tonight. Blake's voice resonated throughout the hall through the expensive sound system. Roche Technologies' success today is inseparable from everyone's hard work. Of course, I also want to especially thank certain former employees, such as Mr. Cole standing in the corner. Although you have contributed to the company, the business world is ruthless. Those who lack ability, or whose social standing is mismatched, are destined to be eliminated by the times. Today is not only our wedding, but also a day when Roche Technology is entering a new era. Those who are not important should leave now. Thunderous applause and shrill laughter erupted from the audience. Victoria stood beside Blake, dressed in a pristine white wedding gown, like a haughty ice queen. She didn't glance at me once, as if I were just a speck of dust on the roadside, unworthy of even a second of her attention. I took a deep breath and straightened my back. 5 years of forbearance transformed into a cold, decisive ruthlessness at this moment. I strode forward, unhurriedly walking through the crowd, straight to the area below the stage. All eyes immediately turned to me, and the murmurs gradually subsided. Blake frowned, clearly displeased with my lack of tact. Cole, can't you understand human language? Where's security? Throw this shabby pauper out. 2 tall security guards in black immediately rushed out from the side and reached out to grab my shoulders. I stared at them coldly, then pulled a formal document from my briefcase and slammed it down on the champagne table near the stage. Glasses and saucers rattled, and liquor splashed everywhere. "No need for security to lift a finger," I said, looking around the room. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried clearly to everyone's ears. "Victoria, Blake, you don't need to rush to fire me. I have already formally submitted my resignation to the company before this." Victoria's usually calm eyes finally flickered slightly. She clearly hadn't expected me to resign first. Instead of begging like a stray dog, she stood at the edge of the stage, looking down at me in her 10-centimeter heels. Her voice icy cold. "Cole, do you think you can save some dignity this way? You're just a technician paid by the company. Without Roche technology, you won't even earn enough to rent an apartment in Manhattan. I've approved your resignation. Now, take your things and get out of here immediately." The laughter in the hall grew louder. Everyone was waiting to see me make a fool of myself. I looked at Victoria's exquisite yet cold face, a chilling smile curving my lips. I slowly straightened up, brushed the dust off my suit, and said, word by word, "Victoria, I hope you won't be begging me to come back later." After saying that, I ignored the laughter of the crowd, turned around and strode out of the hall. Just as he reached the revolving door, Victoria's slightly hurried voice suddenly came from behind him. "Wait, Cole, explain yourself. Who do you think you are? Daring to make me beg you?" "Where are you going? My groom?" I stopped, but didn't turn around. I didn't need to turn around, because I knew the real show was just beginning. Pushing open the heavy double solid wood doors of the banquet hall, I was greeted by the cool Manhattan night air, mingled with car exhaust and the smell of hot dog fumes. The hustle and bustle and luxury behind me were instantly shut out through those doors, as if we were in 2 completely different worlds. I loosened my tie, ripped off the cheap rented tie, crumpled it up, and threw it into a roadside trash can. "Hey buddy, you don't look too happy." A deep, magnetic voice came from the window of a black Lincoln Navigator parked on the side of the road. I turned my head and saw the car window roll down, revealing a slightly aged but sharp-eyed face. It was Marcus Vanderbilt, a well-known veteran financial tycoon on Wall Street. 6 months ago, at a closed-door technical conference, I had helped him solve an extremely tricky vulnerability in a quantum encryption server as a guest architect. At the time, he casually handed me a business card, saying that if I ever couldn't make it in the tech industry, I could call him anytime. I took it as just a capitalist's polite remark at the time, never expecting to run into him here today. "Mr. Marcus, what are you doing here?" I stopped in my tracks, somewhat surprised. "I just finished a boring charity gala and am heading back to my estate on Long Island." Marcus pushed open the car door and stepped out with steady strides. He wore a bespoke, hand-tailored suit, and although he was over 100, his back was ramrod straight, exuding an air of authority. "But you, Cole, instead of spending your wedding night with your beautiful wife, why are you out in the cold wind all alone? Did your shrewd and capable CEO wife kick you out?" "The hero?" Marcus's tone was somewhat sarcastic, but his hawk-like eyes seemed to see right through people. I chuckled self-deprecatingly, opened the car door, and got into the back seat. Mr. Marcus guessed correctly. I was just fired from Roche Technology, right at their wedding banquet. A brief silence fell over the carriage. Marcus got in, closed the door behind him, shutting out the outside noise. He lit a cigar, and blue-gray smoke filled the dimly lit interior. "Roche Technologies? That little company that just went public on Nasdaq with its distributed algorithms?" Marcus exhaled a smoke ring, a playful smile curving his lips. "I remember when they were raising funds 6 months ago. That bum Blake Morton was begging for a takeover." "What? Did Victoria, that girl, kick out her CTO to curry favor with the Morton family?" "It's not just about kicking them." I leaned back in my leather seat, my tone as calm as if I were talking about someone else's business. "They think Roche Technology's success is due to Victoria's commercial packaging, but they've forgotten who really holds the soul of this company. Without my underlying open-source protocol support, their system would be completely paralyzed within a month." Marcus turned and gave me a deep look, his mockery gradually turning into admiration. "I like young people like you who can stay calm in times like this. That kid Blake Morton, relying on his family's wealth, is used to running rampant on Wall Street, thinking he can buy all the geniuses with a few stinking bucks. Cole, do you want these arrogant capitalists to know what true despair is?" I turned my head and our eyes met in midair. I knew this was an opportunity, a golden chance to completely turn the tide. "Mr. Marcus, I need funding, a legal team, and a brand new platform that can directly compete with Roche Technology," I said clearly and without hesitation. "Funding is not a problem. Long Island Capital Fund can inject $100 million in seed funding for you at any time." Marcus stubbed out his cigar and extended his rough, powerful hand. "Cole, tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, bring your technical team and core data directly to the top floor of the Wall Street Financial Center. I want everyone to see how long that so-called publicly traded company can last without its real brains." After saying goodbye to Marcus, I returned alone to my cramped apartment in Queens. The rent was cheap. The space was small. And the constant rumble of the subway tracks echoed all around. For the past 5 years, all my savings and energy had been poured into the Roche technology project. I was nominally the technical director, but Victoria, for the sake of the company's cash flow, only paid me a meager salary, and even my stock options were repeatedly delayed with various excuses. As soon as I opened the apartment door, I heard a shrill female voice coming from the living room. "Cole, you coward, how dare you come back?" Sitting on my old sofa was my mother-in-law, Helena. She held a glass of red wine, wore an expensive evening gown just picked up from the dry cleaners, and her face was full of scorn and disdain. Following closely behind was Victoria's brother, Robert. "Mom, how did you get the key to this place?" I looked at them coldly. "Why can't I come?" Helena slammed her wine glass down on the coffee table, pointed at my nose, and shrieked, "Cole, what were you doing at the wedding today? Do you know how much you embarrassed Victoria?" Blake's face turned black on the spot, and if Victoria hadn't intervened, the Morton family would have delisted Roche Technology from Nasdaq right then and there. "You're just a poor, gigolo programmer, not even worthy to shine Victoria's shoes, and now you dare to threaten her so brazenly at the wedding?" Robert chimed in with a sneer. "Exactly, brother-in-law. Oh no, you're a dead man now. Who do you think you are? My sister liking you is a blessing you've accumulated over several lifetimes. Now that Victoria has married into a wealthy family, the Ross family will be a true elite on the Upper East Side, and you're not even worthy to carry our shoes. Hurry up and pack your personal belongings. The company pays the rent for this apartment, and the landlord will be coming to take it back tomorrow." Looking at the ugly faces of this mother and son, I suddenly found it utterly ridiculous. For the past 5 years, whenever the Ross family encountered financial difficulties, Victoria would always tearfully beg me for help, and I would always work tirelessly through the night, securing investment and modifying code. Helena used to hold my hand, repeatedly saying I was the best son-in-law in their family. But now, with Victoria married into a wealthy family, these vampires have revealed their true fangs. I didn't get angry. Instead, I walked to the refrigerator, poured myself a glass of ice water, drank it slowly, and then turned around to look at them. "Ms. Helena, Robert, remember 2 things." I put down my water glass, my eyes sharp as a knife. "First, the rent for this apartment is paid from my personal, separate account. The landlord's name is Mike. What expires tomorrow is your fantasy, not my leasehold rights. Second, Roche Technology's current market value is entirely due to every line of code I wrote. Without me, Victoria would just be a pretty but useless vase in a gorgeous dress." "You're talking nonsense," Helena screamed, trembling with rage. "You ungrateful wretch. Victoria fed you, and now you dare to curse her." "Ungrateful?" I sneered, pulling my phone out of my pocket. "Why don't you call Victoria now and ask her if the data on Roche Technology's core servers is still functioning properly without the technical firewall I've set up?" Robert was intimidated by my imposing manner and instinctively pulled out his phone to dial Victoria's number. The call was quickly answered, and Victoria's tired and cold voice came through the speakerphone. "Robert, what's up? Blake and I are at a celebration party. Sis, that bastard Cole is back. And not only does he not admit his mistakes, he dares to spout nonsense here, saying that the company will be paralyzed without him." Robert immediately complained. There was a few seconds of silence on the other end of the phone, followed by Victoria's extremely disdainful sneer. "Robert, let him mess around. A low-level employee who can only hide in the basement and write code. He doesn't even know how to survive in New York without me. Let him go. Don't bother with a stray dog." Beep beep beep. The call was abruptly disconnected. Robert looked at me smugly. "Did you hear that? My sister doesn't respect you at all. If you know what's good for you, get out of Manhattan and stop humiliating yourself here." I looked at them, a playful smile curving my lips. I didn't argue, but instead said calmly, "I hope Victoria will still be smiling this happily when Nasdaq opens tomorrow morning." After saying that, I ignored the 2 uninvited guests and went straight to the bedroom, locking the door behind me. In the stillness of the night, the neon lights of Manhattan outside my window still shimmered. I sat in front of my computer, opened the encrypted terminal, and saw dense lines of code flashing across the screen. Over the past 5 years, I had not only developed Roche Technology's core business system, but also planted an absolutely hidden sleep protocol in the underlying code. With just a simple press of the Enter key, Roche Technology's proud intelligence scheduling system would be completely paralyzed within 24 hours, and all databases would be permanently encrypted and locked. "Victoria, this is just interest. Tomorrow, I will make your entire family kneel down and beg me in the midst of the Wall Street financial storm." The next morning, at 8:55, I changed into a brand new custom-made suit, carried my briefcase, and stood precisely at the top-floor elevator entrance of the Manhattan Financial Center. Through the panoramic floor-to-ceiling windows, the distant Wall Street Stock Exchange was bustling with people, and on the giant Nasdaq screen, Roche Technologies stock code was flashing a blinding red light. Several senior Wall Street analysts passing by cast curious glances at me. Just then, the elevator doors dinged open, and Marcus stepped in with several top lawyers and technology executives. "Good morning, Chairman Cole." Marcus patted my shoulder with a meaningful smile. "Your ex-wife just called an emergency board meeting at headquarters, claiming that Roche Technology has achieved its most outstanding quarterly financial report in history. I think it's time to give this proud female CEO a real gift." I nodded slightly and stepped into the conference room that symbolized the pinnacle of power on Wall Street. In the panoramic conference room on the top floor of the Wall Street Financial Center, a light drizzle was falling outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, shrouding the distant Manhattan skyline in a hazy mist. The rich aroma of freshly ground Blue Mountain coffee filled the air, mingling with the encrypted documents laid out on the heavy mahogany table. I sat in the main seat. Before me lay the strategic investment agreement worth hundreds of billions, formally signed by Long Island Capital. Marcus sat to my right, toying with a limited edition Breitling pen, his gaze fixed intently on me. Several top lawyers and venture capital analysts from leading Wall Street firms stood solemnly on either side of me. "Cole, all the funds have been deposited into our dedicated offshore fund account in the Cayman Islands. Long Island Capital's first $1 billion in liquidity is ready to be used to short any arrogant little company at any time." Marcus put down his pen, his tone calm yet exuding an undeniable sense of control. "All board seats and voting rights have been transferred to you. From now on, you are the true mastermind behind this game." I opened the thick stack of documents, my gaze landing on the signature section on the last page. Long Island Capital's official seal was already affixed. All that remained was for me to sign my name. "Thank you, Mr. Marcus. This funding comes at just the right time." I looked up, my eyes completely expressionless. "No need to thank me. There's no such thing as charity without a reason in business. I just value your technological barriers and that idiot Black Morton's arrogant stupidity." Marcus laughed, his laughter tinged with disdain for the arrogance of traditional, established families. "Young man, in this country where capital reigns supreme, dignity is never begged for by groveling, but rather forged by absolute power and the wealth at the top of the pyramid. Go ahead and show them how long their castle in the air can last without your core algorithm." I didn't linger. After signing my name, I left the financial building with 2 senior technical consultants. Meanwhile, inside a high-end office building in Midtown Manhattan, Roche Technology was in a state of jubilation. In the spacious and bright open-plan office lobby, a towering champagne tower had already been built. Several young public relations managers were filming short videos on their phones, preparing to post them on social media to celebrate the company's first trading day after its IPO. CFO Andrew, beaming, pushed open the CEO's office door, carrying a stack of the latest quarterly financial reports. In her office, Victoria sat in a leather swivel chair, a glass of soda in her hand, her gaze aloof as she looked out at the street scene. Although there had been a minor hiccup at last night's wedding, Roche's stock price opened high today, buoyed by Morton Capital's support, and surged by 15%. To outsiders, it was a perfect business merger and a marriage between equals. "President Victoria, look at today's market." Andrew excitedly placed the financial report on his desk, his tone full of flattery. "Morton Capital not only injected us with the initial $20 million in follow-up funding, but retail and institutional investors were also extremely enthusiastic about entering the market this morning. Young Master Blake just called to say that he's hosting a small celebration party at a private club on the Upper East Side tonight, and has invited several mainstream media outlets from Wall Street." Victoria's tense lips relaxed slightly, revealing a haughty and satisfied expression. She turned around, picked up her water glass, took a sip, and said with a hint of condescending certainty, "Andrew, remember, the company's current market value is due to our accurate market strategy and brand packaging, not some useless people who can only hide at the bottom writing code." "The president is absolutely right," Andrew quickly chimed in. "That guy named Cole dared to spout nonsense at the wedding yesterday, saying that the company would be paralyzed without him. He's just overestimating himself. Who does he think he is? Without Roche Technology, he probably wouldn't even be able to afford his rent, and would be hiding in some corner starving." Just then, the office door was flung open. Jack, the deputy director of the Technology Research and Development Department, rushed in, panting heavily. His face was deathly pale, devoid of any joy, and he didn't even bother to wipe the cold sweat from his forehead. Victoria frowned slightly, clearly extremely displeased with Jack's rash attitude. "Jack, you're a senior executive in the technology department. How can you not even have basic workplace etiquette? Didn't you see Andrew was giving a report?" "President Victoria, something terrible has happened." Jack's voice trembled, and he was even panting. "Just now, starting at 10 a.m., the underlying distributed architecture of the company's core servers suddenly experienced a large-scale error. All our transaction gateways and user data ports deployed in the cloud were locked down by the highest level of encryption within 1 minute." Upon hearing this, the atmosphere in the office instantly plummeted from enthusiastic to icy. Andrew's smile froze, and he exclaimed incredulously. Jack, what nonsense are you spouting? Today is the first trading day after the company went public. How could the server have a problem? What have you tech department been doing all this time? It's not our problem, Jack explained, his voice trembling with tears. Those underlying distributed codes were all built by Cole himself. Only he understood the underlying logic and compilation logic. We can't find the decryption private key in the system backend at all. We just tried all the emergency repair solutions. But not only did they not work, they triggered the system's reverse security isolation, completely locking down the entire database. Victoria's water glass wobbled violently, splashing a few drops onto the elegant desk. Her once cold and aloof face instantly lost its color, and a hint of barely concealed panic flashed in her eyes. What did you say? The database is locked? What about the online trading system? Victoria stood up abruptly, her voice rising sharply, her previous composure gone. It's completely down. Jack swallowed hard, his voice barely audible. Thousands upon thousands of retail and institutional investors are frantically refreshing the platform, and all their trading orders are showing as errors. Our customer service lines are ringing off the hook, and Nasdaq's compliance department just called to demand an immediate explanation for the system crash. Andrew gasped, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. How is this possible? Without that programmer, how could the system crash on its own? Quick! Contact Cole! Tell him to go back to the company immediately and unlock the database. Upon hearing the name Cole, Victoria's face turned pale, then flushed. She recalled how, at the wedding the previous night, she had publicly kicked him out, even hurling insults at him, calling him a pathetic, groveling dog. Now, the very lifeline of the company was in the hands of this man she had so readily abandoned. A sense of shame and a nagging fear she had never felt before welled up inside her. Victoria clenched her teeth, her hands trembling slightly at the edge of the desk from the force of her grip. She forced herself to calm down, picked up the landline receiver, and dialed Cole's cell phone number. Instead of a busy signal, the other end of the phone delivered a long wait. Every passing second felt like a slow, agonizing torture of Victoria's dignity as the CEO of a listed company. Finally, the call was connected. Hello? Cole's calm and indifferent voice came through the receiver, with the faint sounds of traffic on the streets of Manhattan in the background. Victoria took a deep breath, trying to make her voice sound as haughty and cold as ever. Cole, where are you? The company's main server has encountered a sudden malfunction, and the technical department can't handle it. You need to go back to the company immediately and hand over the underlying decryption private key. Considering our past 5 years of relationship, I can let bygones be bygones, and I can even reinstate you to your original position. There was a moment of silence on the other end of the phone, followed by a scornful laugh. Victoria, are you ordering me around? Cole's voice came through the receiver, devoid of any warmth. Yesterday at the wedding, who was it that said I was a penniless nobody and told me to get out of the company immediately? What? The CEO of a Nasdaq-listed company. Don't you even have this much of a memory? Victoria's face was extremely grim. She glanced at Andrew and Jack, whose faces were pale, and gritted her teeth, saying, Cole, don't act rashly. Do you know how much financial loss a system crash will cause the company? Morton Capital will never let you off the hook. Just come back now. Name your terms, and I'll give you whatever bonus you want. Bonus? Cole sneered. Victoria, you overestimate yourself and underestimate me. From the moment I signed my resignation and walked out of the banquet hall, the fate of Roche Technology was no longer my concern. As for Morton Capital, at this point, Cole paused deliberately, his tone carrying a chilling undertone. You can look at the Nasdaq stock market. Roche's share price is starting to fall. This is just the appetizer. Beep beep beep. The phone was abruptly disconnected. Victoria held the microphone blankly, listening to the busy tone coming from it, her mind completely blank. President. The stock price. The stock price has crashed. Andrew suddenly screamed in terror, pointing at the real-time stock market LCD screen on the wall. On the Nasdaq trading screen, Roche Technology's stock code, which was originally red, plummeted within a minute, falling in a straight, avalanche-like manner. The green drop numbers were alarming, instantly wiping out tens of millions of dollars in market value. Victoria staggered back 2 steps, nearly bumping into the bookshelf behind her. She couldn't understand where this grassroots ex-husband, whom she had never really taken seriously, got the confidence and energy to drive her painstakingly built business empire to the brink of collapse in less than 24 hours. Meanwhile, in a high-end private club in Lower Manhattan, I held a glass of whiskey, gazing through the floor-to-ceiling windows at the flashing neon lights of the stock exchange in the distance, a cold smile playing on my lips. This was just the beginning. The real despair was yet to come. A series of hurried and chaotic footsteps echoed outside the glass doors of the lobby. Victoria, flanked by Andrew and Jack, strode in, followed closely by Blake, whose face was dark with rage. Victoria was clearly devoid of her usual glamorous image as the CEO of a listed company. Her Chanel suit was slightly wrinkled, and her meticulous makeup couldn't conceal the heavy dark circles under her eyes and her panicked expression. As Victoria and her entourage walked through the hall, her gaze inadvertently swept towards the VIP viewing area, and she abruptly stopped in her tracks, her entire body stiffening as if struck by lightning. She spotted me standing next to Marcus immediately. At that moment, I was no longer the lowly programmer in a faded rented suit, being bossed around by them, but a capital operator surrounded by Wall Street's top tycoons like a star in the center. Cole? Cole? Victoria's voice was completely distorted with shock. Her eyes widened, and her finger pointing at me trembled violently. How is this possible? How did you get here? What did you do to the company? Blake, standing beside her, followed her gaze. When he saw me, he paused for a moment, then erupted in fury. He rushed over, his face contorted with rage, and roared at me through the VIP barrier in the lobby. So that's what you were up to, you gigolo bastard. The Roche technology system crash and stock market collapse were all orchestrated by you. You insidious villain! Security! Where are the security personnel here? Arrest this bastard who deliberately disrupts business order. Blake's roar echoed through the hall, drawing the attention of many financial elites and media reporters. Whispers and pointing rose from the ceiling as camera flashes began to go off. I held my soda water without even lifting my eyelids, as if Blake, who was barking wildly in front of me, was nothing more than a clown. Young Master Blake, watch your words. Marcus frowned slightly, took a step forward, and the oppressive aura of someone accustomed to being in a superior position instantly suppressed Blake's imposing manner. This is the Nasdaq trading floor on Wall Street, not your Morton family's private backyard. If you dare to make a scene here again and disturb the VIP's normal observation of the market, believe me, I will immediately have Long Island Capital's legal team charge you with defamation and disrupting market order and have you thrown out the door. Marcus was a formidable figure on Wall Street, and Blake naturally recognized this legendary financial tycoon. Although he was arrogant and domineering, in front of a true top Wall Street figure, his arrogance immediately diminished, his face turning pale and then red, and he swallowed back the profanities he was about to utter. Victoria took a deep breath, forcibly suppressing the shock and fear in her heart. She strode quickly to the safety barrier in her high heels, her eyes fixed on me, her voice trembling with an almost pleading tone. Cole, I'm begging you. I was wrong before. I shouldn't have treated you like that at the wedding, and I shouldn't have had you kicked out of the company. Just get the tech department to restore the database right now. Hand over the system's decryption key, and I'll name my price. You can come back to the company as CTO. And we can even remarry. Didn't you always want to buy a big house with me on the Upper East Side? I promise you. When Victoria said remarriage and buying a big house in front of everyone, Andrew and Jack behind her were so shocked their jaws almost dropped. The reporters present, sensing a huge gossip, immediately pointed their cameras at us, and the sound of shutters clicking filled the air. I finally turned around slowly, looking down at this once incomparably proud Frost Queen, seeing the tears and despair glistening in her eyes. I felt only a chill in my heart, without the slightest ripple. Remarry? Victoria, haven't you got the picture? I sneered, tossing the paper cup in my hand into the trash can. 5 years ago, your business failed, and I cleaned up your mess day and night. What did I get in return? Your mockery in the dressing room and from your family. Your heartless abandonment and public humiliation on your wedding day. What? Now that the company is about to go bankrupt and the Morton family's investment agreement is about to default. You remember I'm your husband? Victoria's face was ashen, her lips trembling slightly as she said, Cole, I was just confused at the time. The pressure from the family was too much. Family pressure is not an excuse for you to trample on other people's dignity. I interrupted her, my eyes as cold as ice. From the moment you chose to throw me out like trash for the sake of power at the top of the pyramid, there has been no affection between us anymore. As for you wanting me to come back, sorry. Even if you begged me, I would find that crumbling shell of Luo's technology disgusting. You, Blake, who had heard everything clearly, trembled with rage and pointed at my nose, cursing. Cole, don't be so stubborn. Do you think you can do whatever you want just because you've hooked up with Long Island Capital? Morton Capital has filed a formal complaint with the Securities and Exchange Commission, accusing you of maliciously stealing company trade secrets and committing cyber sabotage. You're going to jail, maliciously stealing trade secrets? I chuckled softly, as if I'd heard the funniest joke. Blake, it seems you're not only arrogant but also ignorant. Every line of underlying code in Roche Technology's core transaction system is an independent intellectual property right, registered in my own name with the patent office. Victoria has never paid a single penny for the buyout of these core technologies. In fact, in my employment contract, I've always been a technical outsourcing consultant. In other words, when did my reclaiming what belongs to me as my private property constitute stealing trade secrets? Upon hearing this, Andrew, the CFO following behind Victoria, instantly changed his expression. He tugged at Victoria's arm, his voice trembling, and said, President Victoria, what Cole said seems to be true. Back then, In order to avoid taxes and save on fixed asset costs in the early stages, the company's technology patents were always registered under Cole's personal name, and the compliant divestiture and transfer of corporate assets were never completed. Victoria felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. Her legs went weak, and she almost couldn't stand. She finally understood what a gold mine she had unearthed, and what a terrifying adversary she had provoked. Just as the atmosphere in the hall reached a freezing point and tensions were running high, the giant circular electronic screen in the center of the hall suddenly emitted a piercing alarm. "Quick! Look at the market!" someone in the crowd exclaimed. All eyes were instantly drawn to the Nasdaq real-time market display. Roche Technologies stock, which had been plummeting, was suddenly swept away by a frenzy of short-selling orders from multiple offshore fund accounts set up by Long Island Capital at 3:03 p.m. Countless sell orders worth tens of millions poured down instantly, directly driving Roche Technologies' stock price below its IPO price. Circuit breaker triggered. Roche Technologies stock is officially suspended from trading due to severe insolvency. A cold, mechanical, synthesized electronic voice came from the lobby's loudspeaker. This announcement was tantamount to a death sentence for Roche Technology. Blake stared at the red fuse failure message on the big screen. His face ashen. He collapsed to the ground, muttering to himself, "It's over. The Morton family won't let me get away with this. It's all over." Victoria stood there, stunned, tears finally streaming down her face. She looked at me, her eyes filled with endless regret and despair. Only now did she truly realize that with the most foolish decision of her life, she had destroyed the man who truly loved her and could have lifted her to the top. I didn't look at her again, but turned to Marcus beside me and said calmly, "Mr. Marcus, leave the cleanup to the legal department. Now we can start preparing to acquire Roche's bankrupt assets at a low price." Marcus patted me approvingly on the shoulder and laughed heartily. "As you wish, Chairman Cole. Your era has only just begun." Amidst flashing lights and countless astonished gazes, I strode confidently out of the Nasdaq hall without looking back. Night fell earlier than usual in lower Manhattan, and the cold autumn rain, mixed with a bleak wind, lashed against the glass curtain walls of the high-rise office buildings. In the brightly lit offices on the top floor of Roche's headquarters, an eerie silence, as if the building was about to collapse, permeated the atmosphere. 3 full days have passed since the landmark short-selling attack on the Nasdaq trading floor. For Victoria and the Ross family behind her, these 3 days have felt like an eternity of hell. The Nasdaq trading halt was just the beginning. It was followed by a comprehensive financial audit by the Securities and Exchange Commission, joint collection efforts by major creditor banks, and a multi-million-dollar lawsuit filed by Morton Capital due to a default on an investment agreement. In the spacious and luxurious CEO's office, the expensive mahogany desk was piled high with lawyers' letters and debt collection notices. Victoria sat alone in her leather swivel chair, her once elegant and capable updo now completely disheveled. The Chanel suit she wore, which had once represented the status of a successful Upper East Side woman, looked wrinkled and worn, and her eyes were sunken and bloodshot. The once aloof and arrogant ice queen now seemed to have aged 10 years, her face ashen as she stared at the alarming negative numbers in the company account on the computer screen. With a loud bang, the office door was violently pushed open. Victoria's mother, Helena, and her younger brother, Robert, stumbled in. Helena's meticulously maintained face was filled with terror and anger. As soon as she entered, she screamed at the top of her lungs, "Victoria! What happened? Why is there a court order to seize our Long Island villa? All our credit cards have been frozen by the bank, and even our luxury car has been impounded." "Aren't you the CEO of a listed company? Didn't you marry the eldest son of the Morton family? How did things turn out like this?" Robert chimed in, equally furious. "Yeah, sis. I went to the club today to see Blake, hoping he could lend me $500,000 to tide me over. And guess what that bastard said? He not only had security kick me out, but he also publicly announced that he was breaking off his engagement with the Ross family. He called the Ross family a bunch of blood-sucking liars and threatened to have the Department of Justice sue us until we're bankrupt." Hearing her mother's and brother's scolding and wailing, Victoria felt a surge of blood rushing to her chest, and a metallic taste rose in her throat. She slowly raised her head, and her once clear and proud eyes were now filled with endless emptiness and despair. "Break off the engagement? Even Blake has abandoned us?" Victoria's voice was hoarse, like 2 rough pieces of sandpaper rubbing together, with a touch of desolate self-mockery. "Nonsense!" Helena slammed her fist on the table in a fit of rage. "Blake is in deep trouble himself. Morton Capital lost everything in this investment in Roche Technology, and the board has placed all the blame on Blake, stripping him of all management rights. He hates us now. Why would he want to marry a jinx like you?" The harsh reality, like a series of heavy hammer blows, shattered the Ross family's long-cherished dream of becoming a wealthy family. Only now did they truly understand that kicking aside the man who truly held the core technology and had quietly supported the company for 5 years like trash, in order to curry favor with the powerful and greedily pursue the Morton family's capital, was the most foolish and costly decision they had ever made. Just as the mother and son were arguing and even shoving Victoria, the office door was pushed open again. Andrew, the CFO, walked in, his face ashen, holding a freshly printed asset liquidation report. His voice trembled uncontrollably. President Victoria. No, Ms. Victoria. The asset liquidation team from Long Island Capital is already in the lobby. According to the court's enforcement order, all of Roche Technologies' intellectual property, office equipment, and trademark ownership have been ordered to be auctioned off as collateral. In other words, the company is completely bankrupt. After Andrew finished speaking, he slammed the liquidation report on the table in despair. Without even saying goodbye, he turned and fled from the crumbling ruins of power, looking utterly lost. Upon hearing the word bankruptcy, Helena's legs went weak, and she collapsed to the ground, letting out a desperate wail. It's over. We're all over. We really have nothing left. Robert, his face ashen, leaned against the wall, his eyes vacant. Victoria didn't cry or make a scene. She slowly stood up, walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, and looked down at the bustling streets of Manhattan. New York City at night was ablaze with lights, like a steel forest built of money and desire. However, the place that once belonged to her had now vanished. Mom, Robert, stop arguing. Victoria turned around, her voice frighteningly calm. This is all our own fault. From the moment we kicked Cole out of the wedding, today's outcome was already destined. Why are you still bringing up that penniless programmer now? Helena shrieked angrily. It's all his fault. He deliberately set us up and ruined everything. I've ruined our own lives. Victoria gave a bitter laugh, her eyes filled with deep regret. She finally understood that Cole wasn't some lowly, begging pawn, but a wolf king whom they had driven to the brink of despair, who had finally revealed his fangs. Just then, a steady and powerful footstep sounded outside the office. Several law firm executives in bespoke suits and Long Island Capital's asset management representative, accompanied by 2 bodyguards, walked straight into the office. Leading the group was a senior partner from Long Island Capital, who held a final asset acquisition agreement in his hand and coldly surveyed the messy office. Ladies and gentlemen, let me introduce myself. I am the chief asset executive, fully authorized by Long Island Capital. The executive representative began expressionlessly. Given that Roche Technology is now completely insolvent, according to the ruling of the Manhattan Federal Bankruptcy Court, Long Island Capital, as the controlling shareholder, has completed the acquisition of all remaining assets of Roche Technology. From now on, this office belongs to the new chairman of Long Island Capital. Upon hearing the words new chairman, Victoria's heart skipped a beat. She raised her head, her voice strained, and asked, Who is the new chairman? Is it Mr. Marcus? The executive representative did not answer her question directly, but instead stepped slightly to the side to make way for her. Surrounded by a crowd, a tall, well-tailored man in a dark gray suit strode in with steady steps. The light from the crystal chandelier shone on his cold, handsome face. He was none other than Cole Sterling, the grassroots ex-husband they had all despised, mocked, and personally fired. Upon seeing that it was Cole, Helena and Robert gasped in shock, instinctively taking several steps back, their eyes filled with disbelief and terror. Victoria stood frozen, her eyes fixed on Cole. At that moment, Cole exuded a powerful, domineering aura, his gaze deep, calm, and tinged with a chilling indifference. What a stark contrast he presented to her. Disheveled and utterly destitute, Cole walked to his desk, ignoring Helena and her child who were slumped on the floor, and instead focused his gaze on Victoria's pale and desperate face. Victoria, it's been a long time. Cole's voice was deep and calm, yet it struck everyone's heart like a hammer blow. I told you, this is just interest. Today, I'm here to take back the principal. Victoria's lips trembled violently, and tears finally streamed down her face. She slowly took half a step forward, her voice almost pleading as she sobbed. Cole, I know I was wrong. I really know I was wrong. These past 5 years of feelings I've had for you. Don't you have any feelings for me at all? I'll do anything if you're willing to let the Ross family go. Please, for the sake of the past, forgive us this time. Seeing the once high and mighty Frost Queen kneeling before him, begging for mercy, the air in the hall seemed to freeze completely. Cole looked down at her, his eyes devoid of any emotion, only endless indifference. He slowly reached out, picked up the highest equity transfer agreement for Roche Technology on the table, casually flipped to the last page, and then placed the gold-plated pen in front of Victoria. Old feelings? Cole sneered, his tone dripping with chilling sarcasm. Victoria, when you tore down my dignity at our wedding and kicked me out in front of everyone, did you think of me even a little bit of old feelings? When your family treated this place like a bloodsucker and humiliated me in every way, did you show the slightest bit of mercy? Victoria trembled, her face turned ashen, and she couldn't utter a single word. Sign this complete asset divestiture agreement, and get out of this building. Cole's voice was utterly cold. This is the last bit of dignity I'm leaving you. Otherwise, tomorrow in federal court, You'll be facing jail time for business fraud and malicious breach of contract. Looking at the pen before her, which seemed like a death knell, Victoria closed her eyes in despair, 2 streams of regret rolling down her cheeks. Trembling, she reached out, picked up the pen, and signed her name on the last page of the agreement. In that moment, she buried her dream of marrying into wealth with her own hands, and plunged completely into an abyss of no return. Cole put away the agreement, turned and walked towards the door without looking back. Surrounded by a throng of admirers, his figure disappeared at the end of the corridor. His brand new business empire had officially begun its grand opening. On a crisp autumn morning in lower Manhattan, sunlight streamed through the gaps between skyscrapers, illuminating the bustling streets of Wall Street. A touch of early winter chill lingered in the air, but it couldn't dispel the palpable heat emanating from the financial district. Today marks the day that Long Island Capital officially announces the completion of its restructuring of all assets of Roche Technology. And it is also a significant moment for me to make my first public appearance as the new chairman. Inside a top-tier, multifunctional conference hall in Manhattan's financial district, the room was already packed with distinguished guests, reporters from major Wall Street financial media outlets, partners from dozens of top venture capital firms, and prominent figures from various sectors who closely follow the tech industry were all present. Telephoto lenses and video cameras were neatly arranged, and flashbulbs flickered incessantly, creating an atmosphere of impending storm. In the VIP lounge of the launch hall, I stood in front of a huge full-length mirror, carefully adjusting the navy blue suit I was wearing, handcrafted by a top Seville Row tailor. The knot of my tie was perfectly tied, and the platinum cufflinks on my cuffs reflected a cool and confident gleam. Chairman Cole, all the media reporters and board members are seated. The press conference can begin at any time. Marcus walked in, a smile of approval on his face. This veteran Wall Street tycoon looked at the young man before him, his eyes filled with admiration and respect. Who could have imagined that just a week ago I was merely a poor ex-husband publicly humiliated and kicked out by the wife of a listed company's CEO. And now, I am a business magnate controlling hundreds of billions of dollars and wielding industry power. I turned around and nodded slightly to Marcus. Thank you, Mr. Marcus. Let's go. The moment Marcus and I walked side by side into the press conference hall, the previously noisy and bustling venue fell silent instantly. Hundreds of eyes were fixed on me. Flashes went off wildly, and the blinding light was almost blinding. I walked steadily and confidently up to the stage and sat down firmly in the leather chair in the center. The reporters in the audience immediately raised their cameras and microphones, and a flood of questions about this sensational acquisition came rushing in. Mr. Cole, as the new chairman of Roche Technology, what are your next steps for this company that has just gone bankrupt and is undergoing restructuring? Mr. Cole, there are rumors that you were once the founder of Roche's core technologies, but were ruthlessly fired by your ex-wife. Victoria, is this financial attack a revenge plot you meticulously planned? Faced with the sharp and direct questions from the media in the audience, I remained completely calm. I slightly adjusted the microphone, calmly surveyed the entire room, and my voice clearly reached everyone's ears through the surround sound system. First of all, thank you to all the media friends for your attention to Long Island Capital and me. I began, my tone calm and measured, yet carrying an undeniable sense of control. The business world is never a charity. It follows the most brutal, yet fairest, laws of value. Roche Technology once had the opportunity to ride the wave of the times, but due to the short-sightedness, arrogance, and betrayal of its management, it destroyed its core foundation. Long Island Capital is taking over not for revenge, but to return truly valuable technology to where it belongs. From today onwards, Roche Technology is officially renamed Sterling Technology, and we will embark on a new global expansion. As soon as he finished speaking, thunderous applause erupted from the audience. Representatives from various financial institutions nodded in agreement. They knew that an era belonging to Cole Sterling had officially begun on Wall Street. However, just as the press conference was about to reach its climax with the Q&A session, the double doors at the back of the hall were suddenly pushed open. A series of hurried, chaotic footsteps shattered the solemnity of the hall. Victoria, wearing a thin, old trench coat, her hair disheveled, and her face deathly pale, stumbled toward the stage. Several security personnel from the lobby tried to stop her, but she hysterically pushed them away. Cole, wait! Listen to me! Victoria's voice was hoarse and desperate, with a sob that sounded like she was about to break down. Upon seeing this, the media reporters on the scene immediately sensed a shocking revelation. Their cameras and microphones instantly turned around. Flashes went off wildly, and they focused their lenses on the once invincible, now disheveled Ice Queen. I stopped what I was doing, sat on the platform, and looked down at Victoria, who stumbled and rushed to the front of the stage. There was no anger, no mockery, only extreme indifference, as if I were looking at a stranger. Upon seeing this, the security personnel immediately stepped forward, grabbing Victoria's arms on either side and coldly questioning, "Madam, this is a private press conference. Please leave immediately, or we will have to take coercive measures." "Let me go!" I'm the founder of Roche Technology. I'm Victoria. Victoria struggled desperately, tears mixed with despair streaming down her face. She raised her head, her once proud and aloof eyes now bloodshot, staring intently at me on the stage. Cole, I'm begging you, for the sake of our 5 years of marriage, please let the Roth family go. The court has seized all our properties and assets. My mother has suffered a heart attack and is in the hospital. And Robert is being sued by creditors and faces imprisonment. I have nothing left. I really have nothing left. Seeing the woman pleading and crying, the reporters below the stage whispered among themselves, their flashes recording the dramatic scene. I slowly stood up, straightened the buttons on my suit jacket with both hands, and spoke in a calm tone without a trace of emotion. Victoria, don't you find it ridiculous to say all this now? I looked at her and said, word by word, 5 years ago, when your business failed and you were on the verge of bankruptcy, who was it that worked day and night to code for you, raise funds, and put you on the Nasdaq bell-ringing throne? It was me. And on your wedding day, in order to curry favor with the Morton family, how did you publicly humiliate me and throw me out like trash? Did you show me even the slightest bit of mercy? Victoria shuddered, opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The sacrifices and trampling she had once taken for granted now felt like the sharpest blades, piercing her heart. The business world is about contracts and cause and effect, and the path you choose in life is also your own choice. I turned away coldly, not looking at her again. Security, please ask this irrelevant person to leave. The press conference will continue. Without hesitation, several security personnel lifted the completely limp and ashen-faced Victoria and forcibly dragged her out of the magnificent press conference hall. The doors slowly closed, completely shutting out Victoria's desperate cries. After a brief silence, the audience erupted in even more enthusiastic applause. I sat back down in the center of my chair, my gaze resolute as I looked at the countless flashing cameras below the stage. At that moment, all the betrayal, mockery, and gloom vanished. My legendary comeback was just beginning its most glorious chapter. And thank you for listening. Please subscribe, like, share, and comment. Thank you.